What's up, teammates? And if you're listening to this, don't forget you can always join me live on Facebook and YouTube. I don't have a set schedule that I do these, but you can go to my page, Peaceful Warriors Martial Arts, and you can turn on the notifications for when I go live. Make sure you go ahead and comment, leave some stuff. It's always more fun when these things are conversations. But I want to talk about making a stand today. Actually, it was Confidence Week. This last week was Confidence Week in my studio, and I know confidence sounds like such a simple concept, but it can be so difficult in the application. And usually what I talk about during Confidence Week is learning to tell the difference between confident behaviors and arrogant behaviors, because often they get confused. We always talk about confidence being a virtue, and we kind of like to look at confidence as a positive thing, but then when someone exhibits true confidence, we tend to call them weak. But when someone exhibits true arrogance, we tend to call them strong, even though we claim that we're not a big fan of arrogant people. But that's not what I was talking about last night. I actually got into a deeper discussion because I had a class. We have teen and adult classes, but I teach a mixed age class, and I had a class yesterday that was all teens, and so I decided to change what I talked about just a little bit, right? Because fact of the matter is north of 20 to 25% of women end up getting SA'd, is the way I'll put it, worse than SA'd. That's a quarter to a fifth, right? That's a lot. And when you think of it about it, that means statistically, most teenagers, gender doesn't matter, most teenagers know or are friends with at least one person that is going to criminally do that sort of thing. And often there's red flags and chances we have to check people and make them understand that certain concepts are just like not cool, right? And I want to get into that in a minute, but first I want to talk about the men in the room, okay? Because men, we have a problem, right? We were raised in such a way where showing weakness was a weakness, right? And so most of us as men cannot stand our weaknesses being exposed. That's why you don't see a lot of adult men stick with like fighting arts of any kind, including jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai or whatever else. It's oftentimes, or they don't even try, and it's oftentimes because they are more comfortable protecting their ego and living with the idea that they would be good at fighting and defending themselves, even though they have no training, have never really done it, that sort of thing. But men are more comfortable keeping that idea intact for their ego because they don't like their weaknesses being exposed. Coming out into a martial arts studio and not doing so well and struggling as a beginner exposes that weakness, and most men just simply can't handle it. Just can't handle their weaknesses being exposed. No matter what that weakness might be. I used fighting and martial arts as one example, but there's a lot of other examples, and it's a really common problem we have as men. And then the things we perceive as weakness, right? We perceive not knowing something as weakness. We perceive showing emotion as weakness. We perceive not being able to provide to the level we want to as weakness. And because we see all these things as weaknesses in ourselves, we tend to have a really big problem, struggling with depression, struggling with anxiety, struggling with mental health. What's up, Mar? Good to see you. Thanks for the comment. But we end up struggling with all these things internally because we don't want to show weakness. And I understand, man, I'm in the martial arts world. I talk about how there are certain circumstances where it's a bad idea to show weakness, right? And you have to show strength in certain circumstances. I'm going to get into that in a minute. But at the same time, a lot of times we struggle with these things because we know we have the weakness, but we're not willing to face it. Does that make sense? Ajit, nice. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the comment. So that alone is a problem, I think, in the men's world of raising this new generation of men and our kids. Yes, I understand that there are times to show no weakness and that there are times we need to put that weakness down for a little bit, but to run away from it so completely and then use our ego or use our flawed logic to protect our ego is not helpful, right? Because like I said, the fighting example, all men want to think that they can fight in a street fight and can defend themselves even if they have no reason to actually believe that they can. And most of them are afraid to do a serious martial art of some kind because they're concerned that weakness will become exposed. But exposing the weakness is exactly how you turn it into a strength. You understand what I'm saying? Like if you don't admit that you don't know something, you don't admit that you could improve at something, then you have no chance of actually doing the thing that's going to make you able to do the thing you want to be able to do, right? So that would be like training, fighting arts, or whatever. So the first thing you got to do is put that ego aside and go, okay, I need to learn how to actually do this instead of just assuming I can, right? So the other thing I was talking about last night with confidence is a lot of people think of confidence as a feeling, as an emotion. I don't find that to be true. I find confidence to be more of a decision in how I present myself, right? Because a person can appear confident, can act confident, can even be confident of their ability to handle a situation and still be nervous or anxious or freaked out or panicky or whatever else, right? I feel like confidence and more difficult emotions can absolutely coexist with each other. It's how we choose to show up though, right? And confidence itself is such a great, what's the word I'm looking for? Such a great, I want to say detractor. Detractor is not the word I'm looking for. Gosh darn it. Protection isn't the word I'm looking for either, but confidence can be such a great protection against certain things. I mean, so often people exude confidence in verbal conflict because they want to appear that they're more comfortable in the situation than you are and cause you to be intimidated and things like that. And when you reply with more calm and confidence than they had, right, then it unnerves people because they start thinking, oh, I was pretending I could fight. This guy might actually be able to, right? So confidence can be used as a bit of a de-escalator, right, in that way. And I think that's something that we don't spend enough time talking about. Like I said, it doesn't mean that you're not anxious or nervous. It's just sort of a choice in how you decide to show up in the situation and whether you believe that you can handle the situation or handle the problem or not. And that has nothing to do with whether you're anxious or not, right? And man, I forgot where I was going with that. But maybe I'll get back to it. Now, what I talk to my teenagers about, and this is why I brought up SA and stuff like that, is we've got to get better about checking our friends with this sort of thing, right? Because I can think of 3 people right now that I knew as a teenager who are in prison now. And if I think back to some of the jokes they would make about women, some of the comments they would make that we all just kind of passed off as, ooh, ha, ha, that's funny, there were red flags all over the place. And I can't help but wonder sometimes if I would have stepped up and said, hey, man, it's one thing if it's a funny joke. It's another thing if it's straight up mean and demoralizing and stuff like that. If I'd have made a stand then, could I have curbed that behavior? Could I have shown them that that type of thinking was unacceptable in a community environment? Could I have made a difference that would have stopped someone from becoming a victim? I don't know, but I do wish that back then I'd have had the confidence to take a stand. The problem is I wanted to fit in so badly. You know what I mean? I just wanted to fit in with people so badly. I didn't have many friends. I wanted to be a part of a tribe. I wanted to be part of something. And because of that, I let a lot of things go with certain people and certain relationships that had I had more confidence, maybe I could have done something. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe they would have done the things they did regardless. But the fact of the matter is I get so sick of men making the argument, well, I would never do that. I'm not a bad guy, this, that, and the other. But statistically, we all know someone who is. And if you're not speaking up against them, you're not checking them on that behavior, then what are you doing, right? And it's the same thing. Most of us men are raising kids, right? And so think about raising your son. Would you want your son looking at certain people that way? Would you want them saying the kind of things that you remember those people saying when you were younger? No, you'd guide them to better ways. You would tell them to be strong, to stand up for others that can't or won't stand up for themselves and things like that, right? But we've got to do the same thing. Like, we've got to model that behavior and check that kind of behavior before the people making those kinds of jokes and stuff start to think that it's okay, start to think that it's an acceptable way of thinking, and it always annoys me because I go back to the people who raised me, right? And I have a lot of crappy things to say about the people who raised me, but I remember whole communities, church communities, all kinds of stuff, who would constantly reinforce that we needed to be kind, that we needed to love everybody, that we needed to take care of people, that we needed to take care of our communities, that, everyone deserved an equal chance. Those kinds of things, only to find out later in life that many of the people that instilled those values in me don't really live by them, you know what I mean? Or don't really want to, or maybe don't even believe in them. I don't even know at this point. But I can tell you that I'm angry, like I feel jaded because I was raised in this environment, right? But then at the same time, I was just guilty because I was raised in that environment. I knew how important it was to be kind. I knew how important it was to look out for everybody, community, and all that. But the type of thinking and statements I would let other men around me or other teens around me get away with without checking them, like, makes me think I wasn't living by that process either. So when I started my studio, that was one of the first things I wanted to work with, right? Our teammate character skill of the week, so that I could actually go back and kind of talk to kids and talk to teens about, and young adults about, hey, this is some stuff I wish I would have been more confident about. I wish I would have stood up for when I was younger, because, people potentially got hurt from those types of situations. And, I can't stand hypocrites, but I run into that all the time with people that, raised me to be kind and look out for everybody. And then they can be some of the most confrontational, mean-spirited, backward-thinking people that I've ever known in my life. And I'm struggling even at my age to reconcile the two. You know what I mean? So, like I said, confidence isn't about just feeling calm and confident. Confidence is about, hey, I'm pretty sure I can handle this situation regardless of how I feel right now, of anxious, nervous, whatever, right? So I think we need to reframe the way we look at confidence, and then we also need to make sure we're teaching our kids the difference between confidence and arrogance, right? A confident person knows exactly what they're capable of. They also are willing to admit when they don't know anything. They're willing to admit when they need help. They're willing to admit when they made a mistake. Arrogant people are absolutely not willing to do any of that, because confident people are focused on themselves, or, well, I guess arrogant people are focused on themselves too. I just mean confident people are focused on being who they are and who they want to be, and arrogant people are focused on getting everyone else to think of them in a certain way, if that makes sense. But like I said, I do get tired of a lot of men being like, well, it's not me, I'm not the problem. You don't have to be the problem, you know what I mean? But you got to be part of the solution, is kind of what I'm saying. You got to have the confidence to be part of the solution. Men, stop being so concerned about your weaknesses getting exposed. Your weaknesses being exposed are the first step to taking steps to improving those weaknesses and shoring up the defenses. You know what I mean? So don't run away from taking a martial arts class just because someplace has a kids program. Don't run away from learning how to defend yourself. Don't run away from the bank account not being what you wished it would be, the pay not being what you wished it to be. Don't try to pretend, you know what I mean, that it's beyond what it is. The first step to getting out of a bad situation is acknowledging and recognizing the situation you're in the first place, having the confidence to admit your flaws and admit your weaknesses. It's not always a bad thing, you know what I mean? Like I said, there's times you don't want to show weakness, definitely around certain people, strangers, and people that don't deserve your respect. However, when we're talking about loved ones and the people around you, or even just in your own head, you've got to be willing to admit that there's a problem before you can take steps to fix the problem. Confidence is a big part of it. Your ability to at least appear confident even when you're not so sure, right? That, like I said, is a big deterrent. Deterrent's the word I was trying to find earlier. Is a big deterrent too. It can be used as a deterrent and a de-escalation aspect of situations, so that you don't appear to be intimidated or whatever, causing things to get worse. And of course, just to recap, one of the main things I was talking to the class yesterday about is how we all statistically know somebody who's going to do something heinous and terrible at some point in their life, or at least probably pretty soon in their life. And I also talked about what those things look like, right? Like, a lot of us assume when we think of SA, we think of someone not taking no for an answer, which is true. We think of forcing or drugging or something like that, and those are true. What we forget about is that it's also coercion, right? If you have to coerce somebody and don't take no for an answer and keep badgering and, oh, but why this, but why that, oh, but we're boyfriend girlfriend, we're supposed to blah 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 blah. That kind of coercion is still back to something not necessarily consensual if they felt like they were forced into it or were going to be punished if they didn't. Does that make sense? So women, learn to stand your ground, right? If a man or anybody gives you a gift and then expects some kind of physical contact in return, give that gift back. Gifts aren't supposed to come with a price. You know what I mean? Gifts aren't supposed to come with a price. By your no, right? If, oh, but we're this and our relationship is this and we're supposed to this, no. Just because other people do something doesn't mean I have to, right? You got to stand your ground on that. And men, please, for the love of everything that you love in your life, for the love of your mama, please don't be that person that continues to coerce and push. You know what I mean? And if you know you have a friend that is likely to be that way, and you can usually tell by comments they make around you, comments they make towards certain women, those kind of things, don't be afraid to check them and be like, dude, you stepped over a line. Like, that's not even funny anymore, and I'm worried of where you're going with this and the type of thinking that brought you to this. You know what I mean? It's time to have a heart-to-heart with your buddy, right? But not doing that and not doing anything about that, and then turning around and being like, oh, but not all men or whatever, right? That's back to kind of peak arrogance. Oh, well, that had nothing to do with me. I didn't do it. Yeah, but have you checked somebody who was going down that line, who was going down that manosphere red pill pathway? You know what I mean? And that's something I deal with teens a lot. You know, a lot of them will bring up stuff that they see on social media, and it's just wild, right? And confidence, like I say, can be really important in verbal conflicts or even social media conflicts, right? So one of the things I try to remember is I always want to respond in a verbal conflict in a calm manner, right? I want to appear confident and I want to appear calm. One, it might unnerve the other person, but that's not the main reason. The main reason is I always assume people are watching, even if they're not. And the thing is, the psychology tells us that anyone watching a verbal argument is going to remember what the calm person was saying and arguing for far before what they remember what the person yelling was yelling about. Does that make sense? So being confident can get you heard more. It definitely garners more respect. Being calm, being confident, being the steel in the storm, if that makes sense. Those things can be really, really important for de-escalation. And the same thing online. I always tell people, like, I deal with a lot of crap. I've got like 7 to 8 subscribers on YouTube. I got almost 9K on Facebook, and I get a lot of crap from time to time. And I'll respond once. Some of them I don't respond to at all if it's not worth it or it's obviously a bot account. But I'll usually give one response. But I don't type the response to the person who left the crappy comment. I type the response to anyone else who might read it in the future, right? And then after I give that one response, I might give a second response if they bring up something good, but for the most part, after I give that one response, like that's it. Continuing to argue my point is pointless. I'm never going to change their mind. So it's not about changing their mind. It's about acting in a way that might inspire someone else who sees the argument or sees the conversation later. You know what I mean? All right, so that's pretty much all I had to say today. I didn't really have, obviously you can tell I didn't really have a script for this. I just came in and started talking. But once again, if you like our podcast episodes, you listen to this right now, don't forget, you can join me live on Facebook or YouTube and be part of the conversation anytime that you guys want to. Just go to our Peace Warriors Martial Arts page and turn that on. And remember, think back to the things you were raised to be, and then ask yourself if you became that, and did the people who raised you that way actually exemplify that? Or was it a public persona, right? I think social media brings out the real in a lot of people. Well, I don't know, because sometimes I got people like, I don't know which one's the one that's real. Like, I got people that were around me that helped raise me that were talking about, oh, kindness for everybody, look out for everybody, look out for your neighbors, help the poor, blah, 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 right? We'll say all this, and we'll still say that to your face, and we'll shake hands and have polite conversation face to face. But then they'll go online and degrade the poor. They'll go online and say it's their own fault. They'll go online and absolutely like hate members of their own community and stuff like that, while in person pretending they do. And it leaves it confusing. Like, who's the real you? Is it the online persona when you know no one can punch you in the face? Or is the real world persona where, if you said half of those things, someone's probably going to punch you in the face, right? I don't know. I tend to believe the more online persona, and that's the part that frustrates me, I guess, is the way people can act one way in person, and they can be perfectly polite, nice people, and then they jump online and just become crazy, just absolute insane, mean, just nonsense, right? And they don't see their own hypocritical nature. Because here's the thing: if you want to believe yourself to be a certain type of person, then you got to be that person all the time, online, offline, or otherwise. So if you're just I hate that I can't curse on these. If you're just a mean person, right? Then don't go out in the real world and pretend to be polite. Own it. Just own it. Just own it and be mean and watch what happens. You know what I mean? If you like to think of yourself as a nice person that looks out for others, then you should be that way online too. You should be spreading positivity online too. And that's something I try to do, man. There's too much negativity online because all these things are online are meant to get an emotional response out of us. And it ends up eroding our confidence over time, that we're constantly being hit with these emotional responses. And then most of us take everything we see or read on the internet as true. And that's wild to me. It's wild to me, right? Because anyone can say anything on the internet that they want, and then someone else will go along and go, oh, I like that thought, I agree with that. So it now becomes the objective truth, even if it's a complete lie, even if it's obviously disprovable. But critical thinking skills are lacking. I think we can see that. I remember in 7th grade, I had a history/civics teacher who did like a whole stinking semester on propaganda. And he said that he was doing it because he recognized that propaganda was on the rise after certain law changes in the 80s. And he thought that one of the important things we're going to need to know is how to pinpoint what the red flags are of what is propaganda and what is real. And we did a whole stinking semester on that, where he would show us 2 different counterpoints, or 2 different videos of counterpoints, or 2 different arguments about things, and then give us like 10 minutes to try to figure out and guess which ones were propaganda and which ones weren't, based on a series of red flags that most propaganda falls under. And yet, ended up as an adult, and I paid attention in that class, and I see it. Like, I'm not always good about it. Sometimes I miss some, sometimes I'm wrong. But at the same time, I see other people just fall for some of the most obvious. It's wild. But anyway, have the confidence to be a critical thinker. Have the confidence to question your own ideas and beliefs. Have the confidence to question your own opinions. Have the confidence to be able to argue the counter opinion to the one that you hold, right? It's where real understanding begins to happen, and the black and white, this and that, one side or the other stuff starts to fall apart when you see the true nuance of people, the true nuance of existence in this world. And if you're confident enough to admit that, too many people are just scared of it, though. Too many people want to see the world as one way or another, people as one way or another. And it's because they're scared of how chaotic and complex the world really is. So they just want to simplify everything. Same way as men who are so terrified to have their weakness exposed. They don't want people in their life to realize how little money they're making. They don't want people in their life to realize that they can't afford certain things. They don't want people in their life to realize that they don't even want themselves to realize that they might not do well in a fight depending on who they're going against, right? The thing is if you're untrained and you get into a fight or self-defense situation against another untrained person, you're just leaving it up to luck and fate on who makes the right move at the right time, right? The more trained you are, there's never a 100% guarantee of being able to defend yourself, but the more highly trained you are, the higher your odds of success. You know what I mean? Because you're better at reaction time. You're better at reading movement. You're better at making the right move at the right time. You're better at delivering power more efficiently. You're better at technique. You're better at not telegraphing and things along those lines. But in order to actually get good at those things, you first have to admit that you're not that good at them. And let's face it, most men are never willing to admit that they're not that great at something. It's terrible. Let's raise our sons to be better. So I'll see you guys again. Be the best teammate you can be, and be the best at being you.